This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary DeHart, and I am the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast and the publisher of Insightful Accountant. It is March the 5th. I like to share the date just in case somebody's listening to this in September. If we say something in our discussion that doesn't hold true in September, you know that it did hold true in March, at least on March 5th of 2025. Things do change. So my guest today is Bryan Droznes, who is the general manager of Mango. Welcome, Bryan. Thanks for taking a few minutes to have a discussion.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So we were talking in the green room. You're in Utah. Terrible ski season, unfortunately, but I will say a bad ski season is probably better than no ski season, which is what I've had for the past, I don't even know, 12 years. It's been so long since I've skied. It's killing me.
Yeah, one of the bad things about living in a ski town is you get you have high expectations about snow. You know, Utah has some of the best snow in the world. So when we get a not that good season, we complain a lot, but in reality, it's still beautiful up here. So
yeah, I'm sure it's better than the hills of North Carolina.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do here is I'm going to kind of flow of the conversation, just get you to tell a little bit about your background, a little bit about the parent company of ProfitSolv, and then a little bit on Mango, and then we'll dive a little bit into the product itself and wrap up with how do people find Mango and what events you'll be at, etc. So let's just dive in. What is your background? What were you doing prior to Mango?
Yeah, so I've been in technology many years. Mango is part of a larger umbrella group of companies, which is backed by private equity, 12 brands in total. And I worked for a couple of years at the at ProfitSolv, which is the umbrella company, doing several tasks before being specifically allocated to Mango and really running Mango and all of our accounting specific brands for almost a year and a half now.
Okay. And those brands are, what are those? I should know those off the top of my head, but so you got Mango, which is practice management related. And what were the other two?
So the main brands that we have are Mango and Mango Share. Mango is our full suite practice management solution, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then we have Mango Share, which is a file sharing and e-signature specific tool. Those are our two main products.
Okay. And then I don't want to dive too deep into it, but are they individual products, or if I have Mango, I've got Mango Share, or it's an add-on?
Yeah, well, I think philosophically they're two different solutions. If you want to use the traditional kind of best of breed versus all-in-one separation between product types inside of software, Mango is an all-in-one solution. So a very kind of comprehensive end-to-end solution for accountants.
Mm-hmm.
Mango Share, on the other hand, is a best of breed. It really is a specific product to solve for a specific solution for accountants. So we can dive more into what that means, but I think that's the biggest separation between one and the other. Now, if you are, many of our users at Mango at the highest tier, which is the pro tier at Mango, we also have as an add-on Mango Share. So a lot of I'd say the majority of our accountants that use Mango are in our highest tier Mango Pro, and that also includes Mango Share. So they have this best in class solution specifically for file sharing and e-signature.
Gotcha. Okay. And then ProfitSolv, you mentioned ProfitSolv, I think has 12 companies, you said 12 different companies.
Yeah, ProfitSolv is a very kind of large what we call private equity roll-up, meaning we aggregate a lot of brands under one centralized business. And a lot of those brands are accounting and a lot of them are legal. But we really try to develop solutions for professional services more broadly.
Right. And a lot of they face a lot of the same challenges, right? Especially when it comes to practice management or file sharing. Still a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, and
And
one of the things that you realize being exposed to different professional services is that kind of the core modules of practice management are very, very similar across different professional service style businesses. Time and billing, tracking time, sending invoices, getting paid, integrated payments, embedded finance, project management, document management systems, all of these kinds of things that we talk about. These are the needs of any kind of person that has a professional service oriented business and they need to run their business. So there's a lot of then specialization inside each one of these professional services, but the modules, the way that they use the software and whatnot, the needs they have are very similar across different types of professional services.
right. Yeah, and it's good having the backing of a bigger company, right? Because you can share resources and you can say, hey, this worked over here, let's try it here. I would imagine that would be an advantage of having a ProfitSolv as your backer.
Well, yeah, I think anybody who's been in software knows just how important it is to be able to develop product very consistently, very, very regularly. That generally requires a lot of investment, a lot of capital allocation that has longer term thinking. So having the backing of private equity, having the backing of our corporate sponsors allows us to do kind of very long term product investing. Yeah.
So let's just talk some specifics around Mango itself, around the product, and what I would say maybe some of the key features, advantages, and benefits of Mango, of
Yeah.
using that tool.
So Mango is a accounting specific practice management tool. It's a software, what we say, built by accountants for accountants. So the way that we differentiate ourselves in the market is we have an accounting first kind of mindset, in the sense of we think about what the accounting needs are, what the big problems accountants have, and then we use accountants in terms of how to develop the product and product roadmap to satisfy those needs. Okay. So we aren't, focused on the traditional kind of bells and whistles of software, just trying to build feature over feature. We try to keep the product as simple as we can, as intuitive as we can, to really solve the core underlying issues that accountants have. And I think that is really one of our biggest differentiating factors, the fact that accountants actually spearhead and lead our product roadmap, and we have the accountant in mind first. And you might think, well, what does that mean? And I can talk about what that means in terms of just how to use the product and the problems we try to solve. But one way that I see this play out when people are actually buying our software is, if you think about it, most of the decision makers that are buying software aren't the heavy users of the software.
Right.
So when you're deciding what kind of software to buy, you're doing feature parity between different vendors, and you're trying to figure out, what's the best value, and you're going through that kind of internal process. What we try to emphasize is, actually, you're interacting in only 1% of the overall lifetime that this software is going to be interacting with your firm, right? You're coming in at the beginning, you're making a decision on your software, but probably what's mostly going to make that software successful is the adoption and the buy-in from your team, and how successful the implementation is, and how easy the software is to use, and how intuitive it is. Mm-hmm. And so when I say that we build software for accounting firms with that mindset, that means that if I were to give you this software and you really didn't know anything about it, you would, after a couple of webinars, you would probably be 80% there in terms of learning how to use the core functionality of the software. So the onboarding process is very quick, very expedited. The software has a beautiful design. It's very intuitive. And so firms, again, the decision maker buys a firm, but then it's kind of out of their hands in many of our cases. And so then it's all about, all right, the people that are using it, can they learn it quickly? Can they adopt it? Can they incorporate the software in their workflows? And does it actually solve problems for them? Because the true adoption only happens if it solves problems
Right.
for the people that are actively using it. So that's just one example how simple our onboarding is. That just doesn't happen. It happens only when you design a product that is very intuitive for the end user. So a lot of a lot of the market takes 2, 3, even 4 months to train an entire team on using their software. And, they charge in many cases several $1,000s for onboarding. We don't follow that strategy. We don't charge for onboarding. And all of our users have kind of a white glove experience during onboarding, and they learn it very quickly because of it.
Okay, that actually you led into right to what my next question was, and that was around that onboarding experience. So I go to a trade show, I see the product, I'm like, oh great, my staff would love this product. We're going to buy it. So then what happens? Other than
Yeah.
everybody back at the office is like, what, you bought more
What do we
software? You
do?
lost your mind? Are you crazy? So what does that look like? Because I imagine the biggest challenge is getting that user buy-in. I mean, we're a small company and we've got so many pieces of software that we use, 10% of,
Yeah.
and which is unfortunate, but again, small company. So well, I need this piece, I need that piece, but how do you what does that onboarding process look like, and how do you encourage kind of the buy-in firm wide?
Yeah, all great questions. I think you tapped on this idea of, having multiple software solutions to solve your problems. In software, we call that your tech stack. If you kind of say from a marketing perspective, from a sales, from a productivity, from a tax prep, from a calendaring, email, you got, probably 10, 15 components of your tech stack. What we try to advocate for is an all-in-one solution, which is really, you want to make your life easier. And so if you bring some of these solutions into just one solution, it's easier to use and you save money because the sum of the components is much more expensive than an all-in-one solution.
Yep.
So there's immediate savings. So that's one thing. From an onboarding perspective, I think the first thing I'd say around that is it's all about adoption, and it's all about training your core team members in using the software. And inside of a firm, we try to identify who's the core. Even for larger firms, you have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 strong, heavy users that will be kind of what we call admins, people who really dive deep into the software and want to understand it. And when we identify those people, we try to put them through very specialized, what we call admin training, which is, if you're going to be the go-to person inside of your firm with any questions, well, we want to empower you and we want to enable you to be able to respond things. There's always customer success and support on our end, but the easiest way to learn a software is by asking a work colleague. Right. So we try to identify those users and we put them through admin training, and then we have more generic training for other users. In general, a firm is stood up in 30 days, with data migrated, with the core integrations up and running, and with the majority of their staff already using the product. So that's what we always target during onboardings. The core team members already using the product in 30 days. Now, the downside of this all-in-one solution is that it's incredibly expansive. I mean, you can track time, you can do billing, you can do invoicing, you can do recurring invoicing, you can do a bunch of different options in terms of payments, you can do project management on many different levels, you can do document management and interaction with clients on several different levels as well. So we have an engagement letter component. So there's the services in Mango are very, very broad and can be overwhelming. So what we try to do is, we use the heuristic crawl, walk, run. We try to onboard for the specific needs. What are the top 2 or 3 reasons that got you to decide to buy Mango? Well, let me train you very well on those 2 or 3 needs. Let me train your team. Make sure that you are using the product with a core reason that you bought in mind. And maybe it's time tracking, maybe it's invoicing, maybe you wanted an integrated payment solution. So we try to train you for those things. And then over time, you and your team will start to use more and more aspects of our product. And that is typically what happens in kind of that customer journey. So that's kind of, I think, our overall kind of focus with onboarding. The other thing I'll say that's very distinctive to Mango and very unique is the people that do our onboarding, the people that train new clients are our customer success and support reps. So the people that are engaging with our accounting clients, with our thousands of firms and tens of thousands of users daily and weekly, those are the people that are training the new users. These are not, onboarding specialists that are only doing training of new people. These are engaging with our actual clients and can and deeply understand the challenges that accounting firms face, that users face, and then so they train with that kind of idea in mind.
Yeah, and they can go real world, right? Oh, I was just on the phone with Bob over in Denver. He had the exact same problem. Here's how we solved it.
Exactly, and I think what we try to do in software is it's impossible to customize to the exact workflow of every single firm, because every firm does something. They do the similar tasks, but they do it in very unique ways.
Okay.
So if you try to develop software for every single unique case, you build an incredibly complex piece of software. So you're always trading off solving for everybody versus trying to keep the software as intuitive and simple as possible. So we use onboarding and our customer success reps and support reps during onboarding to also maybe show you best cases, maybe making small tweaks in your onboarding processes or the way that you do business to better align with what we're seeing in the market as most effective practices. So that's, I think, really the secret sauce of onboarding. It's finding that fit, where the firm is leveraging your tool. And again, the decision maker buys it, but then you have to integrate that into the workflow of the firm. And that, I think, is kind of the art, the secret sauce of onboarding.
Right. And so do you find, is there a recurring, 2 or 3 reasons that people end up switching or purchasing Mango?
Well, I think that I'd say several. Number one, they're looking to simplify their lives. They have a piecemeal of solutions, and they realize that it's very inefficient. So they're trying to look for an all-in-one solution, one single point of contact with a big part of their tech stack. They want to send engagement letters, and they don't want to rely on a point solution for that. They want to be able to send files, receive files, interface with clients without having a standalone, document management system. They want to be able to build out projects and monitor people, in different tasks and whatnot related to their different engagements. They don't want to buy a project management specific solution. Same with payments. Integrated payments is such an important component to the value that we add, and having that integrated. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you have a recurring payment from a client that maybe pays you monthly, you set up a recurring payment in our system, and it automatically generates an invoice every month. It automatically sends it to a client, and then when the client pays through a payment link in their email, then that payment, once it's captured by our payment portal, by our payment gateway, it automatically feeds into the system, is paid, automatically reconciles that payment with the invoice, and flags any inconsistency. So, it's a recurring payment. It's not rocket science, but if you have a firm like we do, and the majority of our firms have more than 2,000 clients, and even if you have a small percentage of them on recurring payments, automating that is tremendously helpful, because you do set and forget. So you can deploy what in accounting is a common thread across our firms, which is it's hard to find really good people to work at my firm. So most of our firms have constraints in terms of just great people that they can bring on. So anything that increases their productivity of the existing people, the existing team members, that's a huge win for our firms. So
Sure.
that's just one example of why integrated payments is such an important component. Now you can resolve that. Maybe you have QBD or QBO or other gateways. Maybe you have a standalone payment processor, but then again, how well does it integrate with your workflows, and how easy does it then give you the ability to, say, handle account receivable, which is a big issue that our clients face, and I can talk more about that. But that's a big pain point. You're working in tax, heads down 3-4 months of the year, and then you kind of raise your head and, oh my God, I've got millions of dollars sometimes in account receivables. Now I got to go and collect that. Through integrated payments, you can simplify that very, very, very easily. You can send out engagement letters at the beginning of tax season with embedded payment links to get a retainer already. Even if they're yearly clients, you can set reminders and automated mechanisms to gather and collect AR. There's so many ways that we can make accountants' lives easier, and that all-in-one solution, I think, is a huge value add. And I think this ability of, we're an all-in-one, but we're very simple and simple to learn, simple to use. And in software and in accounting and in life, you have this 80-20 rule, right? And I'm a big believer in that. You can solve 80% of an accountant's problems by really focusing on those 20% of the core issues that they're facing. Now, if you want to solve for 100%, you really need to build so much complexity in the product that it starts to really affect the outcomes. So that's one of our guiding philosophies and what really differentiates us.
Yeah. So I onboard it, and you talked about the engagement letter, you talked about some workflows and some processes. Are there templates for engagement letter and templates for these workflows and these processes, or am I starting from scratch having to figure out how to do these things?
No, we try to make it easy for our accountants. So, from an engagement letter perspective, engagement letters, I think, is a big trend in the industry. A couple of years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, I think very few accountants signed recurring engagement letters on a yearly basis with their clients. I think there's a lot of policies, AICPA, different institutions who have come out with a stance on engagement letters, on the value that they provide, how they protect accountants from the work that they do, how they avoid, scope creep, clients expecting more and more for the same. So we found engagement letters as transitioning to a core element of the accounting practice, because you want to set the stage, the beginning of the season with your clients. You want to define the rules of engagement, what is comprehended, what is not comprehended in your engagement. You want to get that in writing, signed. That has some, legal benefits to accountants to make the engagement very clear. It sets up the expectations for success with your clients, and then that kind of feeds in and into the rest of the yearly engagement. So, having said that, a lot of accountants don't know where to start because they haven't done engagement letters. So we provide them with templates. We provide them with ideas, highly customizable in terms of kind of the different contractual points that it has to have. But at the end of the day, it's the accountant that decides. So we have templates, but it's built in a way that an accountant can customize for his or her needs.
Okay. And then, so what would you say were the top, 2 or 3 issues that are solved? Because I imagine that it's like you have all these firms and they all have their own individual problems, but I imagine that there is a core set of problems that they all face, or some very similar problems. What would you say those kind of core things are?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to discuss that without discussing more broader trends in the industry, because I think at the end of the day, we're all prisoners to more macro trends that we're seeing. I think one of the big trends I've already alluded to, which is the scarcity of great resources, great people that you can onboard to your team. And so the common thread is, how do I do more with the same people? And how do I optimize my resources? So the productivity tools inside of Mango are a core element of the pain points that we're trying to solve for. And different firms have different core pain points. So for some firms, it's, how do I get better visibility into who's paying and who's not? How do I manage my account receivables better? How do I streamline a lot of my payment operations? For others, it's project management. Maybe you have owners that or leaders in the institution that need to have better visibility into what everybody is doing, because they sense that they don't have good tabs on what are all the projects we're having in a given year or given cycle, who's assigned to those projects, and where are we with each of these different initiatives. And so, Mango enables you on the project management side to set up projects very easy to your point, customized templates of what we call engagements activities. And so for a 1040, style engagement, we have pre-populated project management structures that you can use and leverage, and of course customize and adapt. So if you have 1,000 1040s in a given year, you can see that on your dashboard if you're a leader and know where everything is. If you have timelines associated to that, you can see what project is not under scope or maybe is delayed. And so you really have great visibility to be able to track the progress of your overall team. Now, if you then leverage that with budgeting and capacity planning, which is additional features that we launched in 2024, you can now associate, not only be able to see what everybody's doing in your firm, but also, are they at capacity? Are they over capacity? Are we over or under budget with this client with respect to maybe the hours that we allocated to them based off of our engagement letter? So, the variety of pain points is really company specific,
Okay.
For others, it's just as simple as I need to be able to share documents and get them signed, and I need a good client facing portal so that I can send a link to a client so they can upload all their information in a very easy and secure way. So for example, Mango Share, we have probably the best Outlook plugin in the market. Most of our clients, I'd say, are on Office 365. Most accountants, I think, in the US are on Office 365. That's probably the standard. And that's unique to the accounting space. In other professional service industries, professional service verticals, you see Gmail, you see other solutions out there more prevalent, but accountants are very, very loyal to Office and to Microsoft tech stack. So we, for example, have a great Outlook plugin for Mango Share. So say, you need to send a confidential document, which, by the way, most tax documents, because they have PII, personal identifiable information, to be compliant with regulations, you should not be attaching documents to an email and sending them to clients. You should be adopting greater security measures. And so Mango Share, for example, it has an Outlook plugin. So say you open up an email and you attach a document to that email that you want to send to a client. Maybe it's a tax return, maybe it's confidential information or whatnot. You click on this Outlook plugin and it automatically converts your attachment to an embeddable link. And you send that email out, the client on the receiving end, instead of seeing that attachment, they're going to see a link. They click on that link and it'll ask, for example, for personal identifiable information, such as give me the last 4 digits of your social. So they don't need to remember passwords.
Right.
They click on that link and now they've downloaded and accessed that link in a completely secure and compliant way. And for the accountant, it's incredibly easy. So those are just some use cases to the big pain points that we're seeing.
Yeah. So that's great. Is there a sweet spot for a firm that's right for, like, firm size, number of users that's right for Mango?
Yeah, I think the majority of our base of clients goes all the way from 1 user to 100 users.
Okay.
So we are very broad in terms of kind of the scope of clients that can buy Mango and Mango Share. So we are very broad. We don't go to enterprise, maybe the largest of the largest accounting firms in the market. We stay in that 100 user or below.
So even as a solo, or maybe me plus a half full-time, Mango's worth taking a look at. I mean, it still would fit in my wheelhouse, fit in my budget. It's going to be useful to me in running my firm and growing my firm, right? I think that's a big part of getting the right tools in to help you grow, right? Once you get the benefits you were talking about with, the productivity, the visibility. Am I burning, 100 hours on this client that pays me $2, or am I burning 2 hours on the client that pays me $100? Not real numbers, but
100%. And I think you pointed to, big trends in the industry. I think there is a lack of accountants in the US industry. We all know that. Many of our clients have all of the clients that they want, and they're looking to optimize their time, optimize their resources. And so we have a lot of firms like that. Then we have other kinds of firms that want to grow. And so they need that capacity to be able to grow their business. It's hard to hire people to grow your business. You want to really try to leverage the existing resources that you have as much as you can before looking to hire people. We see that as a common trend that leads people to buy our kind of solution. The other thing that I'd say is there's also a trend of younger team members, up and coming team members, where you have, maybe the more established, the kind of the old guard of the business practice, and they're looking to either transition their business, sell their business, move that business over to younger partners. So there's a big transition around younger 30, 40, 50-year-old partners wanting to take over firms. A lot of them want to do a lot of change. They want to bring in technology. They want to incorporate a lot of, state-of-the-art solutions. And so that's also, I think, a lot of the kinds of clients we get, established firms where the younger generations are wanting to, come in and make their impact and really, shake things up in a good way and make the firm more accepting of new technologies.
Right. And speaking of new technologies, we're going to kind of start pointing towards the finish line here. I'm not a NASCAR guy, but since NASCAR has started now, we're coming around turn 4 in our conversation. And so you can't have a conversation that's about technology without talking about artificial intelligence. And so what are you seeing both from from a Mango perspective? We use HubSpot, and HubSpot has its built-in Copilot, and you can throw a lot into it, and it gives you a lot back. Are you guys leveraging AI within the platform? Is question one, and then the second question: what are you seeing from customers from an adoption of AI perspective? Are they just going, I know it's out there, but I don't need it? What are you guys seeing?
So let me start maybe with the second question first, which is kind of what I'm seeing in the marketplace and with our clients. In technology, there's a lot of there's stages of evolution of products that we've seen time and time again with the internet, now with AI. We have the innovators, which are the people who are kind of on the frontier of new technology. Then we have the early adopters, which are the people who are adopting technology very early on in the technology life cycle. And then we have kind of the late early adopters. And then we have where these technologies go to market in a massive way. So the way that I look at AI is the way that I would look at with any seismic shift in technology that produces massive incremental productivity changes in the marketplace, and we're seeing that. We're seeing the innovators, and we're seeing the early adopters. But we're still, in my mind, in that early adopter stage. We're seeing people who are adopting AI are kind of people who are generally more innovative in nature, more risk takers, more on the cutting edge of what's new, more interested in that. We are definitely not in the massive adoption phase of AI. Everybody uses ChatGPT as a consumer, but as a company, as a firm, AI is not on a mass adoption scale yet. We are still in that very early adopter. So the first thing that I'd say is, as an accountant, if you are more conservative in nature, if you are more prudent, if you are more adopting a wait and see, I think that's a healthy attitude to have. And it's a very natural attitude to have during these kinds of massive technology shifts.
Right.
This idea that you're missing on you're missing on the train because you're not incorporating AI into your business practice. I don't see that in the market, and I don't think the technology has evolved yet to say, you are really putting yourself at a disadvantage. Practice management, our core solution at Mango, that is where we are in the mass adoption phase. That's where, like, if you're not using a product management tool to enhance your business and to streamline your operations, you're falling behind other firms, because the majority of the firms in the US have some form of, practice management tool. In the same way that if you're not using tax prep software to service your clients,
right.
you're at a significant disadvantage. So we're not in that mass adoption phase by any long stretch with AI. And I think it's important for accountants to kind of take a deep breath and if you are more, excited about new technologies and more kind of always on the frontier, and everybody knows where they stand in this. Everybody's very introspective and can see, I'm a risk taker and I'm always on the frontier of these technology launches, or I'm more wait and see. And I want to see proof that it actually helps. And I want to see more adoption before being convinced that this is right for my firm at this time. I think that's both of those postures are healthy. And I think we need to make sure that our clients are aware of that, so that they can feel comfortable and not left, kind of left with this feeling that you're either doing things in AI or you're missing out. So that's, I think, number one. Number two is, and I say this as somebody who's really, really lives and breathes technology. We are all trying to figure AI out. And anybody who postures as knowing everything about AI and how it's going to impact specifically the accounting space and whatnot, I think they don't know. And if they want to convince you that they know what's going to happen in the space, I speak daily with very, very knowledgeable people on the frontier of AI, and they are trying to figure it out, and I think that it's such a nascent technology. We are kind of, to use your NASCAR analogy, the green flag, really kind of that first lap of AI, where we're building the core basic infrastructure, where that core infrastructure is, for example, large language models and whatnot, feeds into data structures. Like, how do you even think about data to make it process data that LLMs can use in an efficient way? Because the way that we structure data traditionally inside of software is very different than how AI wants to interact with data. So we also need to support data. The third layer is, like, how do we develop applications that work on AI? So that developer layer of technology, because you need to enable people who develop that fourth layer, which is applications, which is what we as firms and end users use. Those applications are built off development tools. So when you look at AI, you really need to think about AI in those four layers: the core infrastructure, the data layer, the development tooling layer, and then the application layer. And in all of that, it's all green space, and people are figuring it out. There are dozens of new ventures, even in the accounting space, that are launching, that are AI focused, that are, iterating on different models, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So I think that's one important thing. What I would suggest to accountants is, at least try to slowly learn about AI if you're not an early adopter. Try to go, a lot of trade shows in our industry have a big component of AI. Try to ask a lot of questions, try to learn. And I think for people that are in that state, that is fine. There is not in AI a application which is a dominant application at this moment, where if you don't have it, you will fall back with respect to your competitors and with respect to the industry. And there's a lot of false starts. There's a lot of people who have done a lot of AI releases inside of the software industry to say that they were on the AI train.
Right.
But really, when you look at the value that the AI provides within their applications, it doesn't hold up to what it should. And so a lot of my competitors and ourselves, we are iterating on different AI applications. This ties back to one thing that you said at the beginning, which is, the fact that we are a very, very large company. AI is incredibly expensive to develop because you need to think about those four kind of core layers of infrastructure. And so it's very expensive to make it sustainable. And the fact that we have long-term partners is in our capital structure makes us set up for success with AI. Now, you spoke specifically about, all right, what are you guys doing in AI? And what do I see as valuable in AI? This is the $1 million question, which is, how is AI going to really help accountants? And it's not by integrating ChatGPT inside of your software application. It has to be much more in depth. So the way that I think about AI is, you want AI to enhance productivity. So you want to leverage AI to be able to enhance the productivity solution that, for example, Mango provides. And AI, I think one of the earlier use cases, which is incredibly helpful for accountants, for example, is onboarding. So what do I mean by onboarding? I mean the ability to develop automated checklists, the ability to automate the way that you bring in documents within your client portal, the way that you review those documents for accuracy, the way that you, what we call auto indexing and auto file those documents. So imagine you're a firm that brings in, you have thousands of clients and you need a lot of documentation, either weekly, monthly, or yearly, depending on your business. If you can automate that through AI, that is an incredibly valuable service for you. So there's a lot of interesting plays in the industry that are leveraging AI for that style of purpose. And we at Mango and MangoShare, we are going to have very relevant AI releases in 2025 and 2026. But our focus is on providing true value, not integrations and things that really don't help our clients. So one way to leverage AI is through really looking at accounting workflows and where AI can help accounting firms in very specific ways. The other way that you can think about AI is not as a productivity tool, which is how I can do more with less, but how can I learn more about my business? And that is called, business intelligence. It has to do with, well, practice management. If you think about it, we collect a lot of data. We collect data on payment transactions, on profitability, on how much you're billing and invoicing, on how are you leveraging your team, on how many clients you have, what kinds of engagements. If you think about it, leveraging all that data with good AI can provide accounting firms with a lot of business intelligence, which means getting insights that can provide them with knowledge to better manage their own firm, right, and make better strategic decisions. What clients are more profitable? What clients are less profitable? Where am I spending my time? Does that make sense? What is the 80-20 of my business in terms of revenue, in terms of clients, in terms of costs? All of these things, I think, are incredibly important, and practice management being at the core of an accounting firm gives us enormous power to leverage that. The third thing I'd say, or the third way that I view AI is from a revenue enhancement component. So, in sales, they say, it's easier to sell painkillers than vitamins. It's easier to solve a problem and sell something, what we call a painkiller, than it is to sell a vitamin, And the productivity tools are, if you think about it, painkillers, right? Accounting firms have a pain that they need to address. And I think AI can support them in that respect. But the vitamin side of the equation, and there are several really interesting startups in this space for the accounting industry that are looking at this, is how can I expand the value of my client? How can I sell to my same client base where I've built deep personal relationships? And I think this is such a distinctive thing of accounting, which is most of the accounts that I speak to, their clients are deeply personal connections. Accounting firms view their clients in deeply personal ways. They want to create strong bonds. They deal with very sometimes life-altering or very personal things that happen to their clients. And so a lot of them view that. And I think that's very distinctive from accounting, where you're not just another client. They develop strong relationships over many years in that client relationship. And so the question that we're looking at from that perspective is, how can I offer more value, i.e. more revenue, more income, and deeper relationships with my existing client base? And this feeds off a trend that we're seeing that everybody is well aware of, which is, client advisory services, how accounts are trying to go upstream in the market, trying to provide, budgets, forecasting, fractional CFO style work, advisory service style work. How can AI empower them to provide those services in a very efficient way? And so there's a lot of really interesting AI ideas around streamlining the creation of these value-added services that accounting firms can deliver to clients by leveraging AI. And we're also very much focused on looking at that side of the equation. So it's the productivity, the painkiller versus the vitamin, the getting more. And I think that's kind of, I'm quite curious as to how I kind of view AI.
Yeah, I'm not sure how familiar you are or maybe with like ADP and their Accountant Connect platform. It's
I'm
amazing.
familiar with ADP.
And like, if you ever have the ability to to connect with somebody there and see what they've done on their, I think it's called Accountant Connect. We've talked about it. I've talked about it with them several times, but if you ever have the chance to take a look at that, and it touches on what you were just talking about, the vitamin versus the painkiller, what they have provided from a back end, and just for, I don't even know if you even have to have a client on ADP, but they've got this massive toolbox of offerings that you can go in and do a whole lot of things for your firm or for your clients using all these tools that they provided, great vitamins, that they've provided.
Yeah.
So worth taking a look at. So let's, where will people find you guys so they can take a look at the product or meet you and your team? Where are you guys exhibiting this year, 2025?
Yeah, we've got, we are kind of active participants in different important trade shows in the industry.
Yep.
The two ones that are closest to us are, in terms of calendaring, is the AICPA show, Engage,
Okay.
and Scaling New Heights, the Woodard hosted event. So those will be the first couple of trade shows that will be there. We always have a prominent showcase there, and we invite everybody to come visit us to our booth, to talk to us. And then, mangopractice.com is our website. And of course, Insightful Accountant is an important partner. And we also collaborate with you guys in terms of spreading the word.
Certainly.
So there's several connection points.
Okay. And Mango, just mango.com. Is that what you said? Is that the best place? Mangopractice.com. That's the best spot to make that initial connection. Certainly see the product, and then they can certainly reach people from there. All right.
Yes, I think we always recommend people to see the product. You really don't know until you kind of see it, you look at it, you play around with a free trial version that we invite anybody to download. And most people generally, when they use our product at the very beginning, they understand the value very, very intuitively. And then it's just a question of seeing a demo and onboarding. But we always start with, what are your pain points? What are you trying to solve? And how can Mango fit that? That's always kind of our focus through the sales process, through the onboarding process, and as a client.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for the conversation. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I will certainly see you at Scaling New Heights. What do you go? Do you go to the events?
I go to most trade shows, correct? Yeah, I'll be
Okay.
there.
All right. Well, I'll see you there. I haven't been to Engage in a couple of years. Maybe we'll go back to that.
Great
It's
show.
just
It
one
was
that kind
great.
of,
It's a great show. Yeah, there's a lot of it's a huge event.
yep,
That team puts on a great show. So I recommend you go there.
absolutely. Did you, I can't remember if you guys exhibited at Intuit Connect. Do y'all do that
We
one?
did. Yep.
So they announced, or we published it today. They have said, hey, we are going back to ARIA in Vegas the
It's in
20,
December, isn't it? November, December. It's generally later
actually
in the year.
October 27 through
Yeah.
29 is what they said. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that until I read it this morning on Insightful Accountant. So there we go. All right. Well, it was great meeting you. If I were ever able to get back out there and go skiing, I will certainly give you a call. Hopefully there will be snow when that happens, or if not, then we'll go fly fishing. So
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
absolutely. All right. See you soon.